started with Jennifer. And Jennifer, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. AARP is really changing the conversation around how people view mature adults. And can you start by telling us about what the Disrupt Aging Initiative is and how that came about with AARP?
Thank you, Laura. So by a show of hands, I want to see if you have ever said something like, oh, I'm too old for that. Raise your hands if you've ever caught yourself saying, I'm too old for that. How about if you said, I'm having a senior moment, can't find my car keys, I'm having a senior moment. Okay, do you know what that is? That's ageism. And what's interesting is ageism is the last socially accepted ism in our society. And yet we still perpetuate it through humor and through saying things like, oh, I'm too old for that. A lot of other things that I'll get into as well. So at AARP, we launched a campaign called Disrupt Aging, and it's to change the conversation about ageism in America. And our CEO, Joanne Jenkins, wrote a book called Disrupt Aging, which helps people understand what it is, what it looks like, how do you fight against it. It's a nonfiction book. I took it one step further because in our society, there are not a lot of good books that focus on older adults because the publishing world has some ageism as well. And so I took it one step further to write a fiction book about aging. Now, I use a lot of silly foot puns, so, I can be a heel, so sorry for being corny as I use them. And one thing about nonfiction books is that they have footnotes. And so I wanted to write a book that didn't have footnotes, and so Not Your Shoe Size came about because of that. In the book, and what we do is about helping people to understand ageism. And so that's what our campaign is. I actually go into colleges and universities and high schools to teach students about ageism because we want to catch people when they're young. Because once they've perpetuated the ideas in their own head, and they've grown up with those ideas, they have actually a more detrimental lifespan ahead of them, which we'll get into. And so I go in and I do these curriculum lessons with students and in college to be able to educate them about what ageism looks like in their careers, how older adults will impact them, and how that crossroads will intersect. And I have students in the high schools that I have them create greeting cards that have an age-positive message. Because how many times do we go to the grocery store or the Hallmark store and get a greeting card and it's Maxine, or it's, you look good for your age and you're only 32, right? I mean, just all this really negative stuff. And it's funny, haha, you get, a kick out of it. But it's just, the joke is getting old, right? And we want to elevate the aging process to be something that's beautiful, and that's something to look forward to, and that it's not a joke. And so I have these students create these greeting cards that then I send out to volunteers throughout Michigan that are volunteers for AARP. So shameless plug, if you want to be a volunteer for AARP, you can get one of these greeting cards. So anyways, so this is one of the things that we're doing to really help fight against it through the messaging with students, the books, and just having a conversation that changes the conversation about aging.
Okay, so in terms of a person's perception, just like if you can kind of elaborate on what you are already saying, in terms of how a person views themselves and how it can actually influence their life expectancy and their quality of life.
So there is a researcher by the name of Dr. Becca Levy, and she wrote a book just recently called Ageism Unmasked. And this is not her first book. She's a brilliant researcher when it comes to aging. And she wanted to find out how detrimental ageism is to people. And what she discovered through her research is that if you have a negative sense of growing older, right? Like you think of it as decline, you think of it as slowing down, you think of it that you have no purpose and nothing to offer, those kinds of negative beliefs will actually shorten your lifespan up to 7.5 years. As opposed to the people who have a very positive viewpoint of aging, where they look at it and go, you know what, there is still adventure to be had. There is still purpose to my life until my very last breath. There is something that I'm still supposed to accomplish. And yes, I might be slowing down, but who doesn't want to slow down in the rat race of life a little bit? And so if you view it from a positive standpoint, you can actually live up to 7.5 years longer. The studies also show that positive age beliefs can significantly lessen your likelihood of getting dementia. It's really good for your brain to have positive messaging that you're feeding yourself and, of course, society. So if you're providing yourself with positive messages about aging, you will ward off dementia, you will decrease the likelihood of depression, anxiety, stress. Also, interestingly enough, they have shown that through the research that you can perform better on hearing tests and also on memory tasks. So it really does translate into better aging as you get older in life. And this is why we try to capture it in young people, because of the fact that if you can tell people when they're young how great it is to be older, and yes, there's, throughout life there's always hurdles and there's always, slowness and, you're starting to transition away from doing the things that you used to do. But that's just part of the evolving process of life. So if we can capture people when they're young and help educate them about the great things about growing older, they will have a better quality life. And the same is true for you, even at your age, that if you look at what you have left in life and you look at it as a positive thing, you will fare much better.
So in terms of ageism, which has really, up until a few years ago, it was not a term that any of us were very familiar with, and now I feel like it's very much a household term. There are actually some very specific types of ageism. Can you distinguish between what those actual types are?
There are 3 types of ageism. There's internal ageism, and those are the self-limiting beliefs that we hold. So that's like I can't do that at this age. I'm too old for that. Things that hold us back, the barriers to doing and accomplishing things because of what we believe or what we think we're capable of, or what we believe that society thinks that we're capable of. So those are the internal self-limiting beliefs about ageism. And then there are interpersonal. So those are the conversations that you have with somebody else. Oh, you look good for your age. Or you can't teach an old dog new tricks. The things that you tell other people. Those are the interpersonal ageism messages that take place. And then there's the institutional. And this is probably the most sinister, because this occurs in our society, it occurs in the workplace, it occurs even in your doctor's office. There's a term called elder speak, and healthcare is notorious for having ageism in their practice, because elder speak is when you come in maybe with a caregiver, maybe an adult child who's coming along to an appointment with you, and what does the doctor do? The doctor talks to the other person and not you. Or the doctor is condescending and says, dearie, little taps like this. Or, do you understand what I'm saying, or do you need me to write this down for you? Very negative in healthcare. And it's been proven. And then also in the workforce too. There was just a new research study that came out that was talking about how much ageism affects women in the workplace. And it's very detrimental, because they're like, if you're too young in the workplace, then you're not given the credibility because you're not considered experienced, or you don't have the knowledge to be able to do something. Then you become a middle-ager, and then, you're having kids, you're a little distracted because you're parenting, or you're caring for your aging parents, and then you become an older adult, and she's just kind of biding her time till retirement, she's unflexible, or he doesn't, have the technological skills that we're looking for. And so no matter what stage of life you're at, you face ageism. And so it can affect younger people because they're deemed as uncredible, and it can affect older people because they're considered, they're just slowing down, or they don't have the technological savvy, which is absolutely not true. Actually, older adults are starting more businesses that are in the technology field than younger people. And this is this type of information that we try to educate people about, because of the fact that it is so harmful to our culture.
So during one of our first conversations, you had actually told me a story of how you had experienced ageism personally in your life. And so if you would kind of share that story with us, and then also if people are encountering this in their own lives, some examples and some suggestions on how they should respond.
Yeah, so this is so interesting. So I got my degree in broadcasting and journalism in college because I wanted to be able to tell stories through the media. Right out of college, I elected to be a stay-at-home mom, and about a decade later, I tried to get my foot back in the door in broadcasting. I had applied for a TV position as an on-air reporter. And in that interview with the news director, I was told that I was too seasoned to be on TV. Do you want to know how old I was? I was 31 years old. 31 years old, and I was kicked out of TV for being too seasoned. I wish the story was fiction, but it's not. So I naturally did the next best thing, and I thought, I'm going to go into the field of gerontology, which is the study of being too seasoned. I figured I'm well qualified, and I'm going to figure this out. So I went into gerontology and knew nothing. At the same time, my marriage was going downhill faster than an Olympic skier, and so I thought I better, pull my bootstraps and get to work and figure out what this means. And so I started working first at Care Resources, which is the PACE program of all-inclusive care for the elderly. I see some of you nodding your heads. Fabulous program. And then I kept working up the career ladder and eventually became Associate State Director for AARP Michigan, and I've been in that position now for 10 years. So I've been a gerontologist now for 15 years, and what's funny is I am doing more TV now today than ever, and I'm almost 50 years old, so 20 years later, I'm doing more TV. And what's interesting is my platform is being seasoned. So I have been working with Wood TV8 and ABC4 for the last 8 or 9 years doing commercials on providing positive messaging for all people 50 plus. So all of my tips, they're 30-second commercials, and they're tips and tricks on aging well. Then during the pandemic, I launched a TV show called Real Possibilities, which airs on ABC4. And all of the content is to help older adults live their best lives. And so that airs on Tuesdays at noon on ABC4, and I interview local leaders and nonprofit organizations that all have something to do with older adults and helping people age better. And then I'm also a guest host on the lifestyle TV show 8 West. So go figure, right, that that's how the path would go. But that just goes to show that, if I had held to that belief that I was too seasoned to be on TV, I would never have pushed myself to keep moving forward to get into the position that I'm in. And that's where those negative self-limiting beliefs can really just eat away at you, because it could have. And I didn't know how to respond. So the second part to the question is, how do you respond to this when this happens? I had no idea. I was 31 years old. I didn't have a lot of life experience to be able to fight back against this. So, one response is do nothing, and that was my response. Another response is to call it out for what it is, right? Help people understand, that, you wouldn't say that to somebody, if it was like, oh, you look good for your age. You wouldn't say that to somebody who's 18 years old. So why say it to somebody who's 68 years old? And then the other thing is, you can like in the workplace, you can take it to HR. The problem with age discrimination in the workforce is it's very difficult to prove, very difficult, because they will use things like, we're going in another direction, or, you had your best years behind you, things like that that are a little more covert, a little more difficult to prove because they're just very subliminal. And so you have the opportunity to, you can do nothing, right? It's just sometimes it is the easy way out, or you can kind of push back against it and challenge something. Like, why do you say that? What, when you hear the jokes or whatever, what makes you perpetuate that? Kind of step into it. It doesn't have to be argumentative, but just, try to find out where their belief systems lie with that. And then do a lot of research about this so that you can start to see it for what it is and call it out for what it is, so that you yourself aren't holding on to those beliefs or perpetuating them in society either.
So much of this series is always about starting a conversation, and I think this is a really, really important conversation. And a lot of times these are internal conversations, like what Jennifer is saying, where we really have to tell ourselves, wait a second, I'm not too old to do this. Absolutely, I'm not too old to learn this, to do this, to figure out, how to find a way. I think that's very important. And then the other conversations are with our friends and with our family as well. And so much of this I know from being a daughter that, I'm one of those kids that sometimes feels like they know best, and my wonderful mother's sitting out here in the audience, but this is so much about you as a demographic, learning for yourselves the things that are important to you and that are going to lead you to the best future, so that if your kids come with the finger pointing, you can just turn around and say, you know what, I got this. I've already done this. I've already prepared for this. I've already, I have resources for all these things that you're talking about. You don't have to worry about me because I've got this. And that's a really great feeling for both sides of that. Now, so much about getting older is really about aging with grace, and it tends to be how we either embrace the aging process or how we fight it. And you wrote a really fun fictional book about this called Not Your Shoe Size. So if you could just talk a little bit more about the storyline of that and how the idea of that book came about.
So the story, Not Your Shoe Size, is the story of two women who are aging in life together from the age of 10 to 100. And in the 5th grade, they're given this challenge to write their obituary to determine how they're going to live their life to become 100 years old. Now, the two characters have very opposing viewpoints about how to age in life. The one character is about embracing her age, her geriatric sneakers, her gray hair, her love handles, her crow's feet. The other character is all about anti-aging. She is chasing after the elusive fountain of youth, trying every remedy under the sun to stay young. Now, the two women are lifelong best friends, but they have these very opposing viewpoints on how to age well. And the reason I captured it like that was because the fact that those two women represent each of us. Because in life, we want to feel okay with gray hair and wrinkles and geriatric shoes. And yet our society, which is obsessed with youth, doesn't allow us to age okay like that, right? It's an anti-aging world. You see all the magazine headlines, anti-aging and defy aging, and 60 is the new 40, and I have yet to see a 40-year-old who says that a 60-year-old is like them, right? 60 is the new 60. You get to embrace your age and be who you want to be. And so the two characters in the book really represent the internal battle that every woman faces. And for women, it is a much harder world to grow old in than it is for men. When men get gray hair, they're distinguished, they're a silver fox, right? But when women get gray hair, well, they're a little washed up and she's not aging so well. And that's the truth. And so when we fight against this and we want to embrace our age, like how do we do it? How do we go through this aging process and age gracefully in an ageist society? And as I mentioned, the publishing world is also ageist because they don't write a lot of great books for older adults. And so I thought, all right, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna write that book that's very witty, that's very relatable, so that women can understand the aging process and feel comfortable in their own skin. And there's no right or wrong way to choose because it's all very individualized. But it's the fact that nobody should tell you how you should be doing it.
Awesome, thank you. And is there anything that we missed that you'd like to add?
I would just say, going back to my original comments, that how you view your age and your opportunities and your capabilities really does have an effect on how well you age in life. So embrace your age, feel good about where you're at, because when you think about what you offer to society, you have so much wisdom and value and experience, and there are cultures, the Japanese culture, the Mexican culture, the Indian culture, where their seniors, their elders are revered, right? Like it is an honor to become an older adult. Our society, we don't have that, and that's so unfortunate. And so by pushing back against the ageism a little bit and being active, showing people just through who you are, the vibrancy of older adults, we might be able to move the needle a little bit on this. So I am so glad you're here because we all want to try to figure out this code on how to live well to be 100, right? You know, if we're going to be here on this earth, we want quality of life. It's not necessarily about the quantity, but it's about the quality. And so while we're here, what are the nuggets of wisdom that we can learn and take along the way so that we can live our best lives?
Jennifer, thank you so much.